for companies that go through that behavioral change, because it's really what it is. It's a big operational shift where you've got decentralization in today's world for a lot of the companies that are out in this space, and you don't have visibility or transparency into what's happening. So you don't really know what you're spending. You don't know where you're getting it. You've got a lot of individual stakeholders that are stretched thin, and they're doing what I would call hidden work, because the amount of time that goes into doing something as basic as ordering a business card, right? So if you're able to reposition all of that workflow, centralize it, create a single system of record instead of single individuals of record across the company. Now you've got complete transparency across it. You've got scaled buying power. You're able to re-leverage all of that time that was spent doing pedantic work and repurpose it so that the marketing team can get refocused on creating high-value initiatives that are going to really drive the properties and the company forward.
Welcome, Eric. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. So, Eric Clark, have been in multifamily for over a decade. We won't say how much longer than that, but it's been a hot minute. I'm with Benson Integrated Marketing Solutions, and so for us, we do everything in the physical goods space. So, really unique segment of the industry to focus on, and has been a newer part of my journey. So, excited to chat a little bit.
Yeah, we're super excited you're here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So maybe let's start for those that aren't super aware of the physical goods. Like, what is typical for a property? Yeah, just start there.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's really every physical interaction that you're going to have when you pull up to a community, right? So it could be the monument sign. It could be your wayfinding signage, could be curb appeal, like the entry mats, the half-drop flags. It's going to be your apparel, your maintenance teams, your office apparel, name tags, all of the print material, brochures, all of those pieces that really create kind of that holistic marketing experience. And then really where the fun begins beyond that is being able to start carving out the tour path and the gifting approach and the pieces that are going to really make that community or the corporate brand tangible and memorable. And so that's where we come in, is we're really able to architect what all of that's going to look like and help identify the best methodology for fulfillment and production and sustainability of that, right? Because a lot of times what you'll find is you have a company that might invest this huge amount of money on an initial brand. And usually, and you guys probably see this a lot running digital campaigns too, right? During that initial lease up, there's all this emphasis, all this energy, all this focus. And what happens once the property is stable, right? Do you have a plan to say, okay, that $8 brochure, how do you create something that's still meaningful, but that's economical for where they are in that leasing cycle? Instead of just shutting down all your paid search campaigns, how do you create something that's going to be a little bit more evergreen or focus on the retention and the renewal? And so for us, it's being able to kind of be that tag-along partner the whole way through and make sure that when that property comes out of the ground, it has that consistent feel, the same as if it was a property that you took over, that you renovate, or what happens when it's none of that fun, sexy stuff, and it's just the basic bread and butter properties that are fueling the engine for your management company. You know, how are you making sure that they've got something that's reflective of their audience, of the company, all of those pieces. So that's kind of where we really come in and create some operational efficiency and some scalability behind all of that.
That's great. And so sounds like a lot of upfront work at launch. And then how often after launch, would you say that clients should be reaching out to you, or are you guys checking in with them proactively, like every quarter or something? What's the typical life cycle?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, our approach is very different in that we really are a true platform partner for all of our clients. So we don't do one-off projects for individual properties. We really work at a corporate level to establish that partnership. We've got dedicated account teams that'll work with each of our clients. They'll do regular touch-ins with the regionals or the properties directly or the corporate contacts so that we can really focus on understanding the business objectives, the needs not just operationally of the assets, but are there corporate initiatives, corporate campaigns, team member appreciation events, anything that really becomes that opportunity to create a meaningful interaction in a physical way. So our team is very proactive in those communications, and we really just want to be able to be there and give the best guidance and support that we can.
So it sounds like the different, you guys will be like a one-stop for them to handle all this stuff versus trying to cobble together a bunch of different vendors to handle the physical goods.
Exactly. And that's kind of the fun stuff that happens for companies that go through that behavioral change, because it's really what it is. It's a big operational shift where you've got decentralization in today's world for a lot of the companies that are out in this space, and you don't have visibility or transparency into what's happening. So you don't really know what you're spending. You don't know where you're getting it. You've got a lot of individual stakeholders that are stretched thin, and they're doing what I would call hidden work, because the amount of time that goes into doing something as basic as ordering a business card, right? So if you're able to reposition all of that workflow, centralize it, create a single system of record instead of single individuals of record across the company. Now you've got complete transparency across it. You've got scaled buying power. You're able to re-leverage all of that time that was spent doing pedantic work and repurpose it so that the marketing team can get refocused on creating high-value initiatives that are going to really drive the properties and the company forward. So that's really the big behavioral shift, is getting organizations to that point, and then being able to really see what that materially looks like from a financial benefit perspective as well.
I think that's super fascinating because what was going through my head was like there's probably a lot of education you all have to do up front of like, hey, tell us when the employee appreciation event is happening, or like at these key moments in the property's life cycle. It would be great for you all to know so that you can, create the physical goods for them. Something we were talking about before this call was like, how can, digital and physical integrate more? And I think that's something that we struggle with is, through our partnerships with our clients and our monthly calls, we might uncover, oh, they have this event, or, oh, they have this new initiative. And we're like, great, let's now be super reactive and create this digital ad and then get it online. And like, how can we be more proactive in that? And where is there collaboration where we can partner with companies like you all to kind of give that all-in-one holistic service for a property?
Yeah, it's, I think that's always the challenge, is being able to get to a spot if you're an operator or a marketer on the operations side. And I wore that hat for a really long time. And that was always very much the challenge, is how do you have all the right information go out to all of the partners at the right time, so that you can really maximize the benefit of it and leverage all of that collaborative content. And I wish that I had a magic answer as to how to do that better. I think it's something everybody struggles with. And I think within silos, groups have gotten better at figuring it out. And I think they've gotten better at being able to say, okay, if we're going to do a social campaign, then let's make sure that we connect the dots on our website, or a paid search initiative that's going to tie to something that we're doing with, maybe it's paid social as well. And I think they've figured that part of the ecosystem out. And similar in the physical space, I think they've done a better job of being able to connect those dots and say, okay, we're going to have the team member appreciation event. And so now let's make sure that we've got all the properties working in unison on wearing the right branded t-shirts for it, or that. But being able to put the two together is still where I think it's hard. And I think part of the reason for that is you've got sometimes groups that still have capacity constraints because they're focused on managing all of these individual providers instead of leveraging the power of centralizing it. And if you're centralizing it, and if you're looking at it from an organizational perspective, then it suddenly becomes this very different view of your calendar, right? Because now I'm sitting there and I'm very campaign focused of, okay, we've got this team member appreciation event. This is going to happen in September. So what's the social campaign that's going to go with it? What's the physical gift that's going to go with it? What is the message that we want to have be a takeaway to our residents to know that we care about our team members that are servicing those communities? And now when you're seeing it at that 30,000 foot view, instead of being in the weeds worrying about, okay, I've got 15 different vendors that I've got to collaborate with to get all of these individual pieces out, that's when that magic can really start to happen. So I think it's just an evolution, and I think groups are going to get better and better at it over time. I think, like anything, though, it's going to take time.
Yeah, Totally. I'm curious. I'm sure you've seen varying levels of this, but I know you all work with, whole portfolios rather than individual properties. Have you seen it done really well where there is kind of that top level or corporate, structure where there's a content calendar and like you can be more proactive? And if so, is there a team that does that, on the property management side or the ownership group side, or is it like a committee? I'm super curious
Yeah.
about how companies can structure it to be successful.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've seen a lot of groups that do a fantastic job of it, and each company kind of embraces it their own way. And I've often gotten asked by some of our clients if we have seen smaller groups have more success with getting really creative, or if it's the big companies that seem to have endless budgets for things. And I think there's success on both sides of it. But it's definitely where there's a concerted effort at the organizational level to make that the focus of saying, you know what, we are going to view all of these initiatives at a very strategic level instead of a very tactical level, whether it's a big company with hundreds of properties or a smaller portfolio of under 50 properties, right? There's really great success to be had in both, but it's definitely when stakeholders from different parts of the organization also come together behind the scenes, because you can have it be something that lives with marketing, but if marketing isn't connected to ops and isn't connected to maintenance and isn't connected to HR, they only have a small piece of the puzzle that they know. And similarly, if you've got somebody in facilities or in maintenance that only knows their part and isn't really connected to what's happening at the rest of the organization, they may not understand or see the full benefit and the full value. So it's just really good company collaboration and communication that I think is where we've seen those best initiatives.
So you had been mentioning to us offline about connecting these physical goods to the online world. What does that mean? Like, how do people do that? Like, what is something tangible that they could latch onto? And then, do you have any examples of that?
Yeah. There's so many different ways that I think companies can go about doing it. For us, it's sometimes taking a step back and realizing you never know what's going to have a big impact, and what could be a viral moment, or what could be the thing that sparks an entire campaign or grows a part of the business. And so for us, as a fun side note, we recently did a collaboration with MrBeast. And it happened by complete accident. It was not intentional. It wasn't in our core model. We do, as part of the Benson Signs division, we do a lot of stadium work across the country. And so we had a stadium project at a university where we had done a big sign install. And the signs had gotten seen by MrBeast. It had a very specific color, blue, in it, that resonated with MrBeast. He's had a hard time finding somebody that could produce signs in that color. It caught his attention. One thing led to the other, tracked us down, got to the bottom of, we produced the signs, and it became a whole thing. And we did all of the sign work and all of these projects with MrBeast. And it was something very obscure like that had sparked it, right? And I think part of that is we were really just sharing the collaboration with that university, and they were sharing all of their install projects and the progress photos across the way. So when you're able to take content of any kind, it could be project content, it could be whatever it is, and find a platform and a way to share that content, your audience's reach is going to be huge, and you just never know what's going to make that connection for someone. So I think it's just always being cognizant of that. And yesterday there was some really great sessions about generative intelligence and the power of AI, and how, all of those mechanisms are going to start to shift the way people search and the way people interact with content. And it was really interesting for me because I was having a flashback to, again, 10 plus years ago, when SEO and paid search and all these things were just these very novel concepts. And you would sit in the room and they would talk about, okay, you've got to structure your content, and you've got to feed the engine, and you've got to have neighborhood pages and all this stuff, right, for SEO. And then slowly it evolved to, okay, for social, you've got to have all this stuff. And so it's all those same basics, just repackaged in a different way, right? Everything that's old is new again. But I think it's starting to recognize that that digital world is continuing to evolve, but it's still all about mass consumption of content. And so being able to find ways to create your content and tell your story. So if you've got an event, so we'll keep running with the team member employee appreciation, right? If you've got that type of an event, how do you create more meaningful content around it? Don't just create the gift and distribute it. Find a way on social that you can share it. Find a way that you can leverage social campaigns, web initiatives, structure the content, write tags for the content, create blogs for the content that can then be shared, because eventually that's going to be what gets served up, right? If somebody is going to go and do a general online search about what's a great company to work for in Atlanta, Georgia, what's the content that's going to be picked up? It's going to be the content that you intentionally shared with that goal in mind. Because I think the stat that I was reading was that 25% or Google searches are expected to shrink by like 25% year over year, right? It's going to be starting to go with AI and some of these other things. Well, what's going to feed that? And how are you creating that content? So it's just finding ways to make the content be more meaningful in different platforms.
Totally. We were actually talking about that this morning, and in your comment around like what's old is new again. It's like it's search in a different way, right? It's like AI in a different way, and we were just kind of reminiscing when like listicles were big, of like the top 10 coffee shops near this apartment, or like top 10 things to do, and it's like that's still very much real and valuable. But now with like the longer form AI generative search, like people want to know what the experience is. What is it like for me to live at this property? What are the events happening? And so the more we can educate the on-site teams around like just feeding partners, feeding you, feeding us, around like how can we package that to tell the story? Like we're all telling stories about the emotions around living in a building. And so I think that's super important. But I do think we have to help people connect the dots and think with that mindset, because it's not their day to day, right? If you're on site and you're kind of just heads down doing your job.
Yeah.
So it feels very complex. It also feels like it's a big investment to do a lot of these physical goods. Do you guys get pressed these days on like the ROI of that physical investment? And
Sure.
Okay, great. Well, if you could speak about that, like how you, I don't know if you can even prove it out. Sometimes digital is hard to prove out and everything's trackable, right? So just talk about how you sort of convince ownership or whoever's doing the budget that it's worth the investment.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a real challenge, right? Because how do you sometimes prove out the value on something that you can't immediately track that return on? So for us, some of the things that we've done over the years is we've really focused on trying to create some case studies to understand. You can't look at it at the individual item level, right? Because a lot of times you'll get stuck in that conversation of like, well, I found that pen for 2 cents less than this pen, or that cup is $1 more over here than over there. And that's great. And there's a time and a place for that part of the conversation, but it really is about, again, going back to how are you viewing this as an operational process, and what are the steps that are being reduced? So go to the business card as an example. We had done some studies around it. The average amount of time that it takes to create a business card, if you're in a decentralized environment, and if you're working with a traditional agency, for instance, you're going to have the design cost, because they don't design for free, right? Then it might be called a typeset cost. There's always something. There's a fee. Then it's all the emails that go back and forth, minimum 20 emails that go back and forth to review the business card. So you've got to get the data from the person that started. Then you've got to send it to the agency. Then the agency sends you the proof. Then all the back and forth. So now you've got a real time associated with that cost, right? So whatever the average hourly rate for the person that's handling that, multiply it by those hours for the business card, emails, and all the things. Now you're starting to see what that business card is really costing. Plus, you still have the cost of the business card and the production associated with that. And then you get into, okay, you've gotten through all of that, and you ship the business card. Well, how often is it just a business card, right? If it's a new team member, there might be 2 or 3 other things that come with it, especially on site. There's a name tag. There's all these other pieces that, again, if you're decentralized and you're working with multiple providers, those are also all communication chains that have to happen. And then there's a shipping fee for each of those. So if you are able to shift that approach and go to a spot where you say, okay, I've got a fixed cost for my business cards. I know that they're X. I know that they can be created in under 3 minutes because we've got a platform that does it. It's got a smart canvas technology that's built in. You're seeing a digital proof. It can be sent to a production spot in real time. So now you've truncated all of that communication. So you've saved that time and that money. The business card can get shipped out within 2 days. So now the person's getting it that much faster. I mean, I think it's staggering, but sometimes we hear clients that tell us it takes 3 weeks to get business cards. Why?
That happened to us, like for this event.
Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
How is that even possible? Right? And so now you've got all that time that's been saved, plus the cost associated with it. And then, like I said, you're now taking all the other pieces that you need for that person's first day, you're putting it in the same box, and you're paying that one flat shipping fee. So that's another real savings. So you're saving money and time in all of these touch points. And so just imagine scaling that across all the different physical goods that happen at a property. And like you were asking at the beginning of our chat, what are physical goods on a multifamily community? Well, it's all of those things, from the apparel to the mats. So imagine if you can consolidate all that shipping, all that time, there's a real value to that. And then now you've been able to also repurpose the person's time to do more things that are going to drive more value. And then not to mention the fact that there's also just the sustainability component of you're not having all that waste. You're not sending 20 boxes that are going to, most cases, not get recycled as much as we'd like to say they do. Like, there's all those pieces that also go into it. So, yeah, it's never as linear as like, okay, the pen costs 10 cents more, 10 cents less. It really is that comprehensive cost analysis that we try to look at.
Yeah, it sounds like a great offering as far as like the centralization. Like, now I can view it. I'm not scrambling when, like, I don't know, the doormat like gets torn or something. It's like, who did we order this from? I can't remember. Now getting it redone. So there's a lot of just standardization that sounds really great. And then what about, I think about like a lot of these like new builds may give out like a swell water bottle or like that kind of stuff. And I think you were talking about this a little bit at the beginning, where you were managing, like, a brochure used to be $8 when we really needed to be splashy, but now that we're stabilized, maybe we could, cut some of that. So yeah, maybe just speak more towards that. Like, how do you get pressed on like the swell water bottle? Like, should I really? You guys probably make a recommendation where you're like, hey, this package has done really well in this market before. And then I can imagine someone that's really scrutinizing these line items. They're like, oh, do I really need that water bottle or what have you? So how do you manage that conversation?
Yeah. I think it's about, for us, we talk a lot about the right product, the right price, the right quantity. And the reason that we focus on kind of those three pillars of it is because the right product may or may not be the swell bottle, right? Do you want the swell bottle because you want to pay the premium for the name? And there's definitely a value in that, and there's something to be said for that. Is it that you just like the aesthetic aspect of it? Because then we can find something that's far less expensive that accomplishes the same goal, right? And then because we've also got complete control of the production side of so much of the decorating technology around that, we can make it look like anything. We can put anything on there. So you may actually be able to create a more meaningful experience, because you could take the swell looking bottle and I can completely personalize it to every team member in my company and put their name on it, put a tagline about them, do whatever we wanted on there. But we've also bought something that at the raw goods cost was less expensive. It accomplished the same goal. We were able to get a better overall quantity, create a better overall experience, because it's been hyper-personalized to the individual. And on the receiving side of that, you're probably going to care a lot more about that than the fact that it was just a generic swell bottle with a company's logo on it, right? Because now I have something that's truly mine. And so that's where we start to really look at what's the intent, and then what's the right amount? Because a lot of times you'll also end up in that situation where, like, okay, you really want swell. You've got your heart set on swell. Great, that's awesome. Well, to get it within budget, you have to buy, I'm just making up a number, 300 of them. Well, you maybe only needed 150. So what are you going to do with the other 150? Yes, you got a per unit price that was nice, but what do you do with them? It's just waste. They sit in somebody's storage closet. A year later, you do a closet clean out and you find you had all these bottles you didn't know about. And so it's really just being able to make sure that we're looking at it from that perspective and understanding, yes, I could give you exactly what you asked for, but was I a good partner by doing that? Or did I ask you all the questions to get you the right answer that you really needed? I think a lot of times it's probably very similar to running a digital campaign, right? You could go in and you could say, okay, you told us you only want to spend $1,000, but that's not going to make an impact. Like let's figure out what you really need and what's right to get you the goal that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I'm thinking like it's a lot of education on your side up front, because I could imagine someone coming in and being like, okay, I know these bottles are going to be $12 each or whatever, right? And so then they've got their budget of, I don't know, $3,000 or something, and then you guys are like, hey, I hear you, but for like 3,800, we could actually do something that's more impactful from a make someone feel special or unique, or like versus like, so it's a little bit more, but you get these items and they're hyper personalized. There's more of them, yada yada. So I think like eventually I could imagine how someone is like, okay, I've been educated now, and now you guys have already handled all the because of your scale and your process power, you've already been able to handle it. So I don't need to over order. I don't need to like worry about the design. I don't need to blah 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 blah. So just I can see the value provided.
Yeah, and that's the fun part of it for us, is like once you've been able to build that trust, because a lot of it comes down to a foundation of trust, right? So you've built your foundation of trust with your partner, and you get to that place where the conversations are really collaborative, and it's not, okay, hey, we're just going to process an order that came in and they asked. It's really about understanding what the objective is and how do you create something really cool. That's the stuff that's a lot of fun, and that's when really cool projects that kind of live on in a digital space well outside of the physical good exist, because people start to share that. Right, you create those very tangible micro moments, those experiences for people. And if I gave you a Swell bottle, and it could be a really cool Swell bottle, and it's got the Digible logo on it, that's awesome, right? But even if I kept that same Digible logo on the bottle and I put your name on it, you're going to be more apt to share a picture with your name on it than just your company name, right? So it's just looking at those little moments where you can create that narrative shift, and if you do that, what's the return on that?
Yeah, or keep it.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of these things get handed out, and I'm like, all right, do I even want to keep this thing?
Yeah.
But it's hard to throw something out with your name on it.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, you're really tapping into, at the end of the day, what we're all working with when we're partnering with clients is like this psychology of human emotion, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like the number one question we get asked over the years, we have a whole, Lessonly, our internal lesson training program on it, is why am I not number one on Google? Why can't I see my ad, right? And so because as humans, we want we want it to be tangible. We want to see it. We want to feel it. And so I can imagine that being extrapolated on a whole nother level when you're actually in the physical space, and that conversation being way more about relationship management, trust, like navigating the emotions of how can I portray this logo, this building, this emotion in the physical setting. So just a lot of empathy for that conversation, because we've dealt with it more on the digital side, but we kind of have this like, well, it's digital and there's so much behind the scenes and targeting, and actually you probably don't want to see your ad, because the algorithm
100%.
is like not showing it to you because you're not an interested renter. And so it's a little bit, I guess, easier for us to have that conversation than what you with the service that you're offering.
It's it might be easier sometimes, but it's still a challenge to prove it out either way. I mean, I remember being on the other side and having conversations with owners on why a property wasn't number one on Google, and they were spending all day like just searching their own property name. You're like, okay, none of that's what you're supposed to do.
Yes, you're like actually ruining the algorithm. Please stop.
Right. Yeah. So it is, but it's people want that immediate sense of gratification. They want, like you said, they want that tangible aspect, and so seeing your name in some way, shape, or form creates that, and you get that that connection. So whenever you can create that, I think that's the goal.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Well, Eric, is there anything we didn't ask that we should have been asking?
Oh my gosh. I think honestly we had a really great chat. I can't think of anything that we didn't cover.
Okay.
So no, I'm just really glad that you invited me to chat for a little bit today.
Cool.
So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for sharing your time. And if people want to learn more about Benson, or if they want to get in touch with you, what are the best ways?
Yourbenson.com, and also you can always just shoot me a message on LinkedIn or send me an email. So, yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. Thank
Thanks,
you, Eric.
Eric.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.